Welcome to the Broadside Podcast.
With host, my dad, Andy Elliott.
All right, well, welcome back to the Broadside Podcast. I'm Andy Elliott, and on this episode, a panel of us outdoorsmen and women were joined by Bart George. Bart is a wildlife program manager with the Kalispel tribe, a licensed guide in Idaho, and a hound hunter. He also is a cougar researcher and does work in the northeast corner of Washington State on the effects that human voices and hazing has on cats and mountain lions in Washington. It's without giving too much away, it's a pretty great episode. A lot of stuff that a lot of us might not understand about the way cats react to the sound of human voices. So thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoy the show, and don't forget to find me on Instagram, Facebook, Elliott Outdoors. Give us a like, follow, share, YouTube channel. It's appreciated. It helps out. Get the word spread. And
I think we can just get going with introductions again. I know some of you are probably getting tired of introducing yourself on here, but we're going to do it anyway because there's new people. We'll start with Gary.
Hey guys, Gary Strassburg, lifelong hunter and resident of Washington State. Live on Whidbey Island up here in the north corner, and I also have some property over in Wilbur, Washington. And I've actually talked to Bart a couple times about the mountain lions over there. I even actually bought some hunting gear off you, Bart. So anyway, that's me, and looking forward to this.
All right, thanks, Jeff. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, I'm Jeff. I moved to Washington from Idaho in about 2008. Been here ever since. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Charles, if you wouldn't mind.
Hi, Charles Whitwam, president of Hall for Wildlife. How you doing, Bart?
Will, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, name's Will Christison. Lived in Washington my whole life. Adult onset hunter of about 3.5 years. I just love the outdoors, love the wildlife, love conservation. So really excited to talk to Bart about cougars. I am very fresh in that area. So learning's great opportunity.
Thanks, Will. Hey, Joel.
Sorry, I didn't mute myself. Joel Swecker, lifelong hunter. I work as a full-time fireman, so I'm on shift today, so if I have to suddenly jump up and jet out of here, that's the reason why. But yeah, really interested in the conversation. I actually shot a cougar 75 yards in the backyard watching my kids play on a swing set a couple years ago. So that's my involvement with cougars. So I'm just kind of curious where it's all going and information. So.
All right. Thanks, Joel. Bart, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, I'm Bart George. I'm the wildlife program manager for the Kalispel tribe over here in Northeast Washington. I'm also a hound hunter and a licensed guide over in Idaho, and cougar researcher here in Northeast Washington, currently working on a project testing aversive conditioning techniques for cougars that are hanging around homes or subdevelopments or farms or whatever.
All right, thanks, Bart. Marie.
Hi, I'm Marie Neumiller. I'm the director for the Inland Northwest Wildlife Council based in Spokane. I'm a hunter and fisher and just love the outdoors.
All right, thanks, Marie. And I'm Andy Elliott. A lifelong Washington resident, lifelong hunter. And I'm like Will, I'm pretty new to the cougar hunting aspect of it, although I've hunted my whole life. So I'm really interested in getting some input. So I want to say thanks, Bart, for coming on and chatting with us. And I guess, Gary, you're up left in my screen, so you're going to get to go first, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, no problem. The main thing, you and Bart and I, we've talked about it before, about the conditioning of the cats, especially up there in the northeast corner. And I know you've done a little bit of work down there in Martin Canyon, where our place is. Could you just kind of go into a little bit of that on the conditioning? I know you did a little bit of that on the meter YouTube with Janice Pulis, I think his name is. I can't remember what his name is, how you say it, but how you guys the conditioning you're trying to do to get the cats to basically kind of be more afraid of humans now that we're not being pursued by hounds anymore.
Yeah, you bet. I'll give you a little bit of history actually about why we're doing it and how that kind of got started. You know, Cougars in Washington haven't been chased around with dogs for almost 30 years now. So we're seeing, and I don't know, I'm not in a position to say like, anything about populations or whatever else, but it appears we have, a saturated cougar population, and we probably have had for a while. We don't know how wolf recovery or other things are impacting cougars, but what we can, say with certainty is that cougar depredations and public safety incidents and things like that were on a pretty serious increase about, 5 years ago or so. And what we were seeing, was this, was a kind of a common story where we'd get a call and we'd, respond. When I say we, it's me or Bruce, the guy that I run dogs with, or, one of the local hound handlers. And we would get a call from the WDFW, typically their enforcement department. And it would be to a farm or subdevelopment or whatever, where a cougar was hanging around and got killed a pet or livestock, or was, causing enough of an issue that it needed to be removed, whether it was, putting a sneak on a kid or just acting unusual. So those calls were really on an increase, and didn't really know why, but we were just trying to figure out how to get ahead of that. And we wanted to start testing this aversive conditioning because one of the real common sort of conversations we're having with landowners was like, this cat was at the neighbor's house last week, and then we got it on trail camera the other day, and now here we are with a dead pet or livestock or whatever else. And we were trying to just come up with some sort of more proactive approach rather than just responding and killing this thing. The reason the tribe started kind of getting behind that was because when we were going out and killing these cats, they were typically just getting pitched, thrown to the dumpster or whatever else. And from a tribal perspective, or from a hunter's perspective, that's gross. That's not what we want to see happening with these animals. So we started kind of thinking about ways to approach the research, and we settled in on using human voice as a stimuli to test this cat's reaction over time to human voice. And the hazing mechanism is basically being chased with dogs and marked with paintballs the first time we treat them. We do that every week for the course of a month, and we're able to compare that cat's data set to itself over the course of a month and how its behavior changes. So we're kind of wrapping the project up. We've got some really good data. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag as far as what we've got for data, but we do have some good stuff. We'll probably start writing this winter and hopefully have some sort of preliminary findings ready to share in, a year or so. We're permitted through March of 24 to continue captures and hazing and all the things. And we're hopefully be wrapping up our field work portion then, and then all the office part starts, which everybody's less excited about.
So sorry to interrupt your get off course. We just had Spencer. Looks like he jumped in. He's a little late too. I don't know if Spencer, you can introduce yourself really quick, and then we'll kind of get back to it. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Hey, I'm Spencer Burdick, Lewis County resident. I've been a lifelong resident of Washington. Hunted since I was 10 years old, and interested in keeping it going in Washington, basically. Sorry about joining late.
All right. Thanks, Spencer. Gary, go ahead, and if you got a follow-up question for Bart. You're muted, Gary.
He's still muted.
Gary, you're muted.
How about that? No, I'm good. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, his main project that he's been doing up there in the northeast corner.
Cool. I got a quick question on that. Bart, what other aversive conditioning technique did you look at, and why did you settle on playing a podcast? I think I understand why the paintball is effective, but can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so we settled in on human voice just because it was easy with the podcast. We actually considered, dogs barking, just a recording of dogs barking. Like every farm out here has, some dog out there yapping around. We considered just like almost not white noise, but it is kind of to me. I have two young boys, but like playground sounds, right? Like just kids playing or whatever, crowd noise or something like that. We ended up just settling on human voice because it's easy and available, and it sort of follows up with what a project in California did. So I didn't have to kind of reinvent that idea. So there's a project in California that used just 80 decibel talk radio to test cats' response when blasted over a kill site, and of course they ran away when you play loud human voice 3 feet away from a kill. So we've kind of followed up with that. I think that the dogs, because I'm a hound handler and because that's something that I'm interested in, and because Washington is in a unique situation with having not ran cats or pursued cats for so long, we have a lot of the cougars here they're totally naive to that experience. Kind of one of the theories that we've kicked around is that states, neighboring states, Idaho, Montana, even Colorado, have fewer depredation and public safety events, certainly fewer per capita, but fewer in general, because those cats get chased around. And when a cat's hanging around, there's a hound handler or somebody in the area that gets that call, and they deal with it, and they kind of learns to avoid those interactions. So that was kind of the theory that we're testing. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get there with our data set, but that was why we settled in on that protocol.
I hadn't heard about this California study. Is this, you said you were building on, did they have results?
They used, it's published. I think Dr. Justine Smith, I think, wrote that. It's been several years ago. Collared cats, they'd find a kill using a point cluster, set it on, I think it was set to video, but I could be wrong. And then a motion activated speaker, and their speaker would blast 80 decibel talk radio 1 meter, which is pretty close. Their control sound was crickets or frogs, like kind of a nighttime white noise, natural soundscape.
I see.
So when they blasted the frogs at 80, whatever next door, the cats didn't respond as strongly to the humans. And then the kind of discussion item was, oh, cats are terrified of human voice. But 80 decibels is pretty damn loud when it's 3 feet away and it's totally quiet outside and you're eating. I think most of us would jump up and run away if that happened too. So not incredibly surprised by those results, but that was how I got the 80 decibel talk radio idea.
That's great. Thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong. If I remember that, I guess you can call it a documentary, the film that you did with Giannis. You got like within 15 feet of that one cougar playing the podcast. You just kept walking closer and closer and closer to it. And to me, I was watching that going, yeah, all right. Well, I'm walking past a lot of cougars that are just laying there all the time. and how many times had you hazed that cougar? How much experience had you had with that cougar, if you remember that?
I don't know what number we were on with that cat. It was still pretty early. She hadn't been hazed. I'll kind of tip our cards on some of the data that we're getting right now. So our control portion of the study, it's not a perfect control, but it's the best we can come up with, is, we call her a cat, and we're able to see right where the cat's at. We have 2-second data on a handheld, so I know where I'm at, where the cat's at, where the dogs are at all the time. And I'm approaching that cat. And for our project cats, I approach them. I let them mobilize. They run off. I stand there where they were previously bedded or whatever. I let them mobilize and flee however they're going to flee. And then I grab a data point where they stop. Now I have 3 data points, basically. My location when they mobilized, the location from which they mobilized, and then the end of their flight path. So I have those 3 data points. I can start that data set to compare against, next week and the week after, and then the final. When I'm hazing the cats, I'm seeing a pretty serious increase on pretty much all of the cats. What we're seeing with our control cats, we're not pursuing them. So I approach those cats with the speaker playing. They're listening to me approach them. We're seeing those distances shrink down. And I think we only have an 8 or 9 right now, but I think every one of those cats by the 3rd or 4th approach has let us walk up and look at them we stop at 10 meters. That's kind of our limit. We don't go closer than 10 meters. But really a compelling data set to see that. And then at that last control data set, we then haze that cat and roll it right into the project and start hazing that cat for the next 4 weeks. So we have a really interesting data set on an individual cat showing the sort of development or habituation. And then we start hazing it and we mark it with paintballs, and we have these aversive conditioning days. We see those distances increase significantly. So really an interesting thing. And, that's applicable. We get a lot of calls where, cats are hanging around in town or whatever. And people's kind of first response now is to grab their phone and start taking pictures and do that sort of thing. And the best thing they could do for those cats is probably to start hollering at it and, throwing rocks and sticks and being more aggressive and try to get that cat out of there and make that an uncomfortable situation. So hopefully at the end of this project, we'll be able to have some ideas about a, sort of prescriptive discussion topic as far as what we need to be doing to protect people's pets and livestock, and also manage these cougars that are just hanging around in close proximity to people.
Yeah. So, I mean, am I correct to assume, I remember it's been a while since I watched that, but yeah, as you were explaining it, I remember thinking, okay, cougars are just used to hearing people talk or kids play in a playground or whatever else. That's not freaking them out. They'll lay right there, 15 yards away. That's not freaking them out. My point is they can be that close to humans. I'm not using this as like scare tactics, but things can happen because you got a cougar, you got a apex predator right there. Some kid walks by. It just happened here down the street, actually, in Half Moon Bay in California. Kid was out in the afternoon, thankfully with his grandparents. I think with both of his grandparents, they're walking this trail. Mountain lion came out and just attacked him. It was like 6 p.m. My point there: mountain lions aren't running away from people. It sounds like to me, unless you are possibly giving them a reason to run away. Human voices aren't scaring them away. Am I kind of making
I think you're spot on.
Yeah,
you're spot on there. I mean, these cats are just accustomed to hearing dogs barking and engines running and people talking without any negative interaction whatsoever. Other places, where there's a active hound community and active, hunting community, the Bitterroot Valley, for instance, has a ton of cats and a ton of people running dogs and different things like that happening. I'd be really curious to try to do a follow-up over there and collar a few of those cats to see how they responded, even on those initial approaches, to see like they have a very different experience over in Montana and in Idaho than our cats do here in Washington.
Yeah, do you mind if I hop on that? So for what we have in Washington, since we don't have we don't have hounds, what, as an expert on hunting cougars, what would you say is our best mode of like strategy or tactics for hunting in Washington, so that we can actually pressure these animals, make sure that they're somewhat, averse, afraid, whatever you want to call it, towards humans? Do you think that would help long term as a strategy if we have more successful, more cougar hunters on the landscape?
No, not really. I mean, I just can't think of a method that hunters could use. If you're hunting cougars, you're not hazing them, right? You're sneaking around, you're trying to call them in, you're tracking them, doing whatever. I really think it's like to make a landscape scale difference, it would either be a pretty heavy lift as far as agency action, getting something out on the landscape with their hound handlers or whatever else, or like a recreational pursuit season or something like that, which I don't think is in the cards anytime soon. So yeah, and I just don't think that with our current management schema, there's any hope of like, not, and I don't really want to see this either, like the cougar population is getting beat down so low that those interactions just aren't going to happen. So we're just in kind of a tough situation right here now.
Gotcha. So you think, I'm not sure if you're aware, we have a petition in the works right now for year-round cougar in areas where the quota doesn't get met in Washington. And also, as an expert, do you think that will have any effect on human and cat interaction? It sounds like that's a no as well, based on what you just said.
I don't know if that will have an effect on a landscape level effect. I think that I wasn't aware of your petition. My first sort of knee-jerk response would be that the biggest benefit would be for landowners that have a cougar standing in their driveway, checking out their chicken coop or their dog or whatever else, that decide not to shoot that cat because season's not open and they are not aware of any legal protections or anything that they might have. Those cats are, potential troublemakers. If they get a pass on that and just get chased off or whatever else, seems fairly likely that they're going to show up and offend. So that would be a benefit, right? If a cat's hanging out in somebody's yard and season's open in, August, they could shoot that cat legally and make use of it, whether they eat it or tan the hide or take it to the taxidermist or whatever. And that's a better use of that cat, in my opinion, than waiting 2 weeks for it to kill their pet or livestock or their neighbor's pet and livestock, and then getting a call to go out there and catch that cat with dogs and kill it. And then it ends up in who knows where.
Right. And it would also do a lot to raise funds for more conservation efforts or studies for cougar if we sold more tags or maybe had a full season tag rather than just the regular season tag. So sounds like that has some potential, I guess. Right.
Yeah, I don't think there's a conservation cost or risk involved with it. I don't the number of cats removed probably wouldn't go up, above sustainable levels.
Gotcha. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Are you on the same? Oh, go ahead.
Kind of on the same track as that. I was wondering about the time of year that you get calls. Is that a year-round thing? Is that seasonal? I like to feel like hunters would make the difference, keeping cougars more in the woods, but that's probably just wishful thinking. Do you notice any difference?
It's a year-round thing. We get calls all the time. It's been kind of a busy week over here. We've had 3 or 4 calls in the last probably 10 days over here in Northeast Washington. It seems like there's a little bit of a pause in depredations in early June. It probably has to do with the fawns hitting the ground and the does being, heavy to birth and maybe a little easier picking. But no, it's pretty year round. I wouldn't say totally consistent, but pretty close. Like I said, the big pause comes just when the fawns are hitting the ground and calves out hitting the ground and they're just available.
Do you see it is maybe you're not doing it, but do you see a difference in the reaction to human voice from cats that might be closer to an urban area than some that might be further away, or are the ones further away still a little bit more skittish than the ones that are used to hearing kids play, I guess?
That's a good question. We're being pretty deliberate about our study cats, and we're trying to respond to sightings or cats near homes already. So I don't really have a data set of like actual backcountry cats that we wouldn't anticipate having heard human voices. Yeah. So most of the time we turn loose on a cat for the project, it's from somebody's yard or barn.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it was kind of like perfect timing because I want to say like 3 days in a row, there's like a Facebook group here, like local neighbors group. And 3 days in a row, 3 different people have posted pictures of cats all within like a 2 mile radius of all these houses, just walking across their driveway and stuff. And so I was getting pretty pumped up for this conversation. I don't know, Joel, you haven't had a chance to speak. I don't know if you...
Yeah, I guess my only question is what are you guys seeing with? I know when we had our cat incident at our place, there was quite a few people that were reporting seeing a cat that was, I mean, an incredibly far distance from where our house was. And ironically, after our cat was taken out, the sightings ceased. I know I've read some stuff about the cats, having an incredibly big home range, especially the males. But is there, in your opinion, or what you guys have seen with those with interactions, is it over a large topographical area? Are you guys seeing one cat, or are you seeing or do you estimate there's more than one cat within a 20 to 30 mile square mile range? And a second part of that question would be do you think we're seeing more cat interactions because their home range is so big that it's just pushing these cats into urbanized areas?
I'll start with the first part. I think we have saturated cat population, right? So where you're seeing cats, if you remove a cat, another one ready to move into that area. So we get a lot of calls where, it's on Nextdoor or Facebook or whatever else, and it was a cougar sighting with a video or something else, and human nature is for people to be more and pay more attention and check their trail cameras and those sort of things. So there will be clusters of calls from a single neighborhood when there's a cat around. A lot of those end up being not a cat. People watching and see something goes bump in the night and they call and say it's a lion. So I think cats can travel a long ways. When I hear a cougar report and next door they see it and a block away they see it, I tend to think that's the same cat. When I hear there's one 2 or 3 miles away, it might be, but it starts to get less likely. There's enough cats around that when they're on a kill, they're just not traveling that far. A few miles would be about it. So when I hear 10 miles or something like that, I tend to think that's a different cat altogether. That's kind of a vague answer, and I apologize for that, but I just don't. I'm careful about that, and I'm always suspect about trying to, if there's a depredation and then another depredation 10 miles away if we go kill that cat, to be like, all right, we've done it. Now those last people that lost, goats or livestock or whatever 10 miles away are safe. I just never assume that. And you have to remind me, the second part of your question had to do, remind me what that was.
Yeah, so when the game department came out with our cat and was doing the sealing and they were looking at it, they determined that it was a 3 to 4 year old male. He weighed 155 pounds, and what surprised both the game department and myself was that the fact that it was not an old animal, it was kind of a male in his prime. And one of the game wardens made the comment, he goes, we're seeing more and more of this because we believe there's so many cats that typically this male would set up shop in an area that is not so urbanized. And while we live out in the country, I mean, we're not that urban, or we're not that far out. And so, I'm just curious, like, are you seeing more interactions with urban settings with these cats? And do you think that is because of their population numbers, or do you think it's more based upon that they just don't have a lot of fear of humans now because of interactions with dogs and that nature?
I think it could be some of both. You made a good point about that, the age of that cat, and 3 to 4 is still sort of a young cat, but 155 pounds is a pretty good size. I hear that all the time from people, like, when we remove a cat, it's like, oh, it must have been a young cat that didn't know any better. It must have been a really old cat that couldn't hunt for himself or whatever. That has not been our experience. We see probably a cross section of the population. We kill a lot of cats in their prime. They're healthy in every way, that, have no physiological reason to be looking for sheep and goats and things like that, right? They have their teeth, they have their claws, whatever. They have all their ability to go catch wild prey. They're just not doing it. And I don't know the reason for that. I think it's probably proximity and just availability. There's a lot of farms out on the landscape and a lot of hobby farms with, a few goats and a few sheep they're just attractive to cats. So I don't know if it's a density thing or a territory issue. I would make an argument that all of the available habitat, prime habitat that ought to be occupied by cougars, probably is. I just think there's very few places that should have cougars in the state of Washington that don't. So when you have an unhunted population, I think there's probably some really big cats living in the backcountry in Washington, big enough that they're going to be pushing pretty big cats out of their territory that are then forced to live in these ex-urban areas, more near homes and urban areas or suburban areas.
All right, so back to, do you have anything against anything positive or negative to say on, if the cougar season was open year round?
I mean, I would support a year-round cougar season. I don't think we would see major impacts to the population. I don't think it would cause any real conservation concerns. Cougars breed year-round, so the likelihood of shooting, a spotted subadult or a female with young, spotted subadults, of course, are illegal, but shooting a female with young could happen any time of year. So I don't have any issues or concerns with that. It's also, we have game managers that have a fairly nimble system. If we started seeing issues, they could change that. They could change that back. So no, I would support that.
And the other petition, this isn't from us. It's just, it's going to be considered. The other petition is an amendment to the rules. So it's my understanding when there's a problem cougar, they'll call up a group of predetermined hound hunters, right, to go get that cougar. The amendment is proposing that there would also be a group of predator hunters or predator callers that could also be called to help alleviate that situation. So how many are there of you out there, when there's a problem cougar? Is there enough of you? And what I'm leading to is, would that make sense to have predator callers out there on hand as well? And do you have any experience with calling in cougars? I do when I'm turkey hunting, and I've had some close calls, but I wasn't intentionally doing that. But
No, I've done coyote calling and not called cougars in. I would be, I mean, when we show up with our dogs, and our dogs are getting a lot of work with the research project and with depredations and things like that. So they're doing a pretty good job, and they know what we're doing when we show up to one of these farms and depredation events. We're kind of a precision tool at that point. We turn loose from the kill, trail the cat, the individual cat from the carcass, and hope to catch it and remove it. I would just be really suspect about the efficiency or efficacy of somebody out there trying to call cats. I mean, if they wanted to go mess with it, we see that all the time. A lot of people try that, and we get homeowners that want to try that after a depredation, and that's fine. But I think, having a call out list of predator hunters without dogs in lieu of using hounds to remove a cat would be ridiculous and way, way less effective. The idea is to remove that offending animal. We know how to do that. That's not a broken system. There are not enough of us. There needs to be more trained hound handlers with good dogs ready to work, and that is a problem in Washington. We don't have an opportunity to train dogs and keep them ready to work. And the expectation is these dogs, I think that what I feel like the expectation is from the agency is that these dogs sit around all year, and then when they need us, they call, and our dogs are supposed to remember what to do and go out and perform. And then they get put back in the kennel until they're needed again. And that is an unrealistic expectation. We wouldn't do that with, a racehorse or a police dog certainly gets worked all the time. So there's a dearth of training opportunities and a dearth of opportunities for hound handlers. And as a result, we are losing people that are capable of doing the job. And I don't think calling cougars would be effective enough to replace good hound handlers with their dogs.
I don't think so either. I definitely don't think it would replace it. That's why I was asking how many, are you short staffed basically? And would that help? I'm trying to understand the reasoning for this petition. Is it maybe because you are short staffed, and maybe there's some great callers out there? I know there's a couple books on it and whatnot, and guys do that a lot. But I'm not too incredibly familiar with that. So I think that's the intention of this petition as I'm reading it. So.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one. I just heard a little bit of noise about it, but I don't know. I don't know anything about the motivation behind it.
Maybe Marie knows. She has her hand up.
I actually had a question that I kind of wanted to expand on that a little bit. Anytime that we promote increasing the handler season or increasing hunter harvest, we're met with the argument that the reason why we have conflict is because hunters are messing with the population dynamics, or the hound handlers are taking them out, and we're messing with the way that they interact in their territories. And the argument that we often hear is that if we stopped hunting and we stopped pursuit, the animals would self-regulate. They'd self-regulate the population, they'd regulate their territories, and everything would be fine and conflict would go away. Bart, I'd love to hear your take on those arguments.
I mean, my first reaction would be, to look at California as an example of that not working at all, where they don't even have a boot season there. They have, no hound season or pursuit, and they have trouble all the time. I mean, without even going into the biology, you can just use California as a case study to show that that's not going to work. Beyond that, I hear the same thing about, if you kill a mature tom and all of a sudden all these other cats show up and you have all these problems. And I mean, I haven't seen that. That's not been my experience. And I have a couple of just kind of, they seem obvious to me. My questions in response to that would be like, all right, well, if that mature tom is causing enough trouble that we had to kill him, obviously that was a problem. And where were all those cats on the landscape before? Like they wouldn't have just appeared, and that tom wasn't making them behave or stay away from homes. If anything, that tom was probably moving them into less desirable portions of the habitat, exurban or urban or developed areas. So I struggle with that argument. I haven't seen that out on the ground, and I've got quite a bit of experience with depredations and things like that. That just hasn't been my experience.
Thank you. That's a lot like what we're seeing, but then we're often told to trust the biologist. So I thought perfect to be able to ask the biologist.
Yeah, good. Happy to talk more about that another time. That's a long conversation, and there's a whole bunch of history behind those ideas and theories too. So, but yeah, that's another conversation altogether.
Bart, are you able to? Are you an employee of WDFW or contractor? Or nothing. You're just a contractor. My question is, are you able to freely comment to the department or to the commission on issues like this, or no?
No, I can, and I work with the WDFW regularly with my professional job. I work for the Kalispell tribe, and we are partners with the WDFW on a number of different issues. So yeah, we have open lines of communication that way. So my role for like cougar removals would be as a volunteer or a contractor with them. My role as researcher is through the Kalispell tribe, permitted by WDFW though. So yeah, we work in concert with them all the time.
I ask because oftentimes, I don't know, they'll disregard hunters just when hunters are showing up or sportsmen talking about these things. And they've even, one particular commissioner, not really specific to this issue, but said, we keep hearing the same stuff. You guys need to hire your own biologist or whatever, even though they have their own biologist. So when you're given this information and you being a biologist, I was just thinking, let's have Bart talk to them sometimes because he's a biologist.
Bart's our biologist.
Yeah,
yeah, right. Yeah, take it easy.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
but
I do comment periodically as a member of the public. I typically don't. I have to just be mindful of the tribe's position, and I try to represent the Kalispell tribe in the way that they would want to be. And we have a different mechanism for reaching out to the department, and it's typically government to government or more official than, say, providing input, public comment or something at the commission meetings. Although we have, my boss and I have been at commission meetings. We sat in the one in Colville and provided testimony. We get a little more time because we're an agency, and it worked out really well. We ended up getting some results on some endangered mountain caribou stuff, and it opened just a new line of communication that we hadn't had a whole bunch of success with in the past. So sometimes those less official avenues work for us. So I wouldn't take it off the table altogether, but yeah, we just have a few other options.
Gotcha. Awesome to hear.
Oh, shoot, I was muted. Sorry.
Yeah.
Spencer, I see your hand up.
Yeah. Hey, Bart. So back to the conflicts and everything that you guys deal with over there. How many of these conflicts are actually human called in human interactions, not livestock depredation, livestock harassment, etc. issues?
That's a good question. I don't really know the answer to that. There's a lot, but you have to, I mean, again, we leave it up to our conflict staff and our enforcement officers and things like that to make a determination what that level of risk was and if it warrants, a call out or something else. Like cat sightings, a cat walking across your driveway is alarming to a lot of people and just kind of old news for others. So, um, all that stuff is on the website. A lot of times the details are a little bit hazy. But
I was reading through some the other day, and it's definitely questionable, some of the stuff that goes on.
Yeah, for sure. And I get calls like that all the time where people heard a cougar, or it was scratching at their door, or they heard, like all these things, and it's like, okay, well, something stirred this person up.
Yeah. Was it a cat or was it the neighborhood raccoon on the
Right. So they have to kind of filter those and then make a determination whether or not they respond. I mean, that can be tricky sometimes because typically if people are calling it in, they're concerned about it, and you don't want to just totally dismiss them, but you have to filter it. So I don't know the proportion. Most of our calls are depredation events or, actual, evidence on the ground with something dead or tracks or injured.
Yeah, for sure. I had another question too about the home range that you guys were talking about earlier. Are you seeing with the cats that you're trailing back to back multiple times from these conflicts? I assume their home range isn't expanding because, like you said, the bigger cats are pushing them into these sub-suburban areas. I was just curious if it is affecting their home range at all. You guys are seeing that happen, or are they just kind of staying in the same area and not really? Not, I shouldn't say same area necessarily, but still causing problems.
I'm a little unclear on your question. I think we are not changing the cat's home range. We're not impacting their home range with our research. And there's kind of a body of research already that's been developed that talks about that. Like people chasing cats with dogs doesn't really change their home range that much. So I don't know how I think their interactions with other cats would probably determine their home range more than their interactions with people. But I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Thank you for clarification.
I saw your hand pop up, Marie. Did you have a question?
It's kind of off the last train of thread. It was circling back a little bit. Bart, to Charles's earlier question, you had said that there aren't enough hound handlers licensed and trained to kind of meet the need in the state. Is that a difficult process to go through? Is that something that people can work towards?
I don't know what the official process looks like, but it is difficult to get dogs and maintain them and have them trained and be, useful in a depredation event without training opportunities, without hunting opportunities and on the ground sort of things to work your dogs. That is the real barrier to entry. And it's expensive. You end up with thousands of dollars worth of gear and thousands of dollars worth of dogs and kennels and feed and all the things, and you might not get called out very often. You might, depending on where you're at in the state, you might only get called out a few times a year. But if it's a legit public safety event like we've had in, Leavenworth a year or so ago, a person got attacked and there was no hound handler available. Like, that's a problem. And that's when it matters. So I mean, I don't know how many we need on the day to day, but when you need them, you need them.
So there's no legal opportunity for people in the state to train dogs
in that manner? I guess
There's supposed to be a training season coming. It's been passed through the legislature and everything else, but it's been 3 years ago that all that happened. So I mean, I was pretty excited about it initially, but it's just been a slow process, and I don't know if it's going anywhere.
what's
Go ahead.
what's one of the biggest kind of surprises you've seen since you started doing this that you didn't really expect?
No, it's definitely how close the cats let us get. It's been interesting. Somebody kind of alluded to that in their question earlier, but the cats they're pretty comfortable, and we're approaching them typically midday when they're in a day bed, but they'll let you walk right up to them. So, I mean, it's not scary necessarily, but it's a little bit unnerving knowing like, yeah, I'm walking around out there all night and, walking into my elk hunting spots in the dark. Like, it's probably happening. Cats don't want to mess with people, so I don't feel all that unsafe, but it's been interesting to see that.
I think some other people might be leaning into this question. I'm not exactly sure, but you're aware of the department recommendation to the commission to have black bear timber damage permits, right?
Yeah.
What's your
I saw that. Again, my perspective on that would be if you want to do that with precision, they need to use dogs or bait or something. There are more effective tools. If we're talking about, alleviating timber damage, we want to go in with some precision and remove the animals that are offending. I support a recreational spring bear hunt. I think there's enough bears to support that. But I don't want to confuse those things, and I don't want to paint the picture that, we need this timber damage thing and make it into a recreational thing, or vice versa. I think we should have both. We shouldn't count on recreational hunters to solve the timber company and the state's problem that is a result of, disallowing hounds and bait and all the things that they had to protect their investment. So there's room on the landscape for both of those things to happen, and that's what I would support.
So it's my understanding, I believe there was a lawsuit a couple of years ago which basically stopped the use of hounds for chasing bear on these timber damage permits. I think that was a lawsuit from the Center of Biological Diversity, or maybe it was HUSIS.
Right. Yeah, it's all,
So
yeah,
that's out of the picture, right? So the department,
I don't know.
The commission doesn't have the authority, at least, to allow the use of hounds, is my understanding. So the only thing, and this is a tactic from Anna hunting groups, take away a bunch of crap, and you're just left with this, And it seems to me like this is what Washington is left with. And do you have anybody coming in whatsoever to possibly help with timber damage? And yeah, all we're left with now is boot hunters, basically. That's not right, but that's what it's left with, and a lot of the spring bear hunting that did exist was in part sort of in partnership with, hey, we got timber damage here. Here's a direct place where you should hunt in this area. That's all gone, obviously, because the spring bear hunting thing is out the door. So,
right. It's one of those situations, and you're kind of describing it where, if we have 5 tools in our toolbox, which is what we used to have before we had major problems, and they've effectively removed all 5 of them, and then they offer us back the least effective, we shouldn't consider that a win. Like we're still way behind. This is still a deficit, and it's not going to solve the problem.
I 100% agree. And then you'll have commissioners that say, well, boot hunters aren't doing a very good job with what's going on with the Blue Mountain herd. I'm like, well, hold on a second. You you got to bring up, even though I know it's not your decision, you got to bring up the use of hounds and this and all these tools have been eradicated. So don't forget about that and just say, well, the boot hunters can't do a good enough job. I mean, that's a game that they're playing. But yeah, I'm just wondering. I mean, I think it's better than nothing, and it was the same way I thought, I guess, about the second cougar tag. Maybe there's 5 guys out there who are going to get a second cougar, and it sucks. It sucks. It's better than nothing, but everything's an uphill battle.
No, I agree. We need to take every little victory that we can, but we can't rest on our laurels if they give us back a season that's not super effective for most of the people that are going to participate.
Yeah, no, I got you. I got you on that for sure.
Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to go off of that, since it sounds like, Bart, that you are really focused on hounds are the most effective, the most efficient way to control, manage populations of cougars, haze, all of those things, without us going through the legislative process. The only thing we have really to do is boot hunting. Could you see in improving or extending the season, having more harvested cats, and then showing some sort of data correlation between that and interactions that would help us push a legislative action that increased hunting pressure, more harvested cats in certain areas could actually help, so that, I don't know, it's a long shot in Washington, but to eventually bring back hound hunting as a management tool? Do you think that's possible?
I don't know if we would be able to generate the data to make a compelling argument that way. If we did, it would take so long that we'd have already forgotten what we had started by the time we got there. I mean, I think that, again, if we look to other states that are having different issues with cougars, some states are having way fewer issues and some states are having way more issues under different management schema. We can use them as sort of our example because the data exists. We don't have to create it. We just have to pull it out of whatever other place has a similar, cougar population, habitat type, human population, things like that. So the data is out there. So whether or not we could put together a strong enough argument and pitch it to the right people and get it going that way, I don't know that we could do that without sort of a big push to the sort of general public that's not familiar with hounds and cougars and things like that. And it's just it's the low-hanging fruit for anti-hunting groups or animal rights groups, because it's easy to paint that in a really negative light, right? They can show pictures of mean-looking dogs or whatever else and paint this horrific picture. It's not the reality, and you and I know that, but just getting that message out it's been hard for us. So I don't know the answer to your question.
Right.
I don't know if we could get enough boot hunters out there to solve, this issue that we're having with depredations. I don't think it would hurt anything. And I don't know, again, it's not my place to talk about the cougar population or overpopulation or whatever else. It's not really my area. I think we have plenty of cats. We can sustain probably more harvest than's happening right now, but yeah, I don't know. That's not what I'm working on right now.
Sure. Yeah, no, I respect that. Thanks for answering it. So it just sounds like I've read some studies, meta-analysis on mortality to bear populations. Sounds like there's the data out there in other states that we could potentially have something like that to show the effect of hounds and the effect of not using hounds in certain states, to at least support our start of the argument. Would you think that's accurate?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think bears would be an easier species to manage probably than cats. And we could also make an argument that just having people out in those impacted timber units will often keep bears away, where I don't think we could make that argument with cougars as easily, because we see that cougars are pretty tolerant of people compared to bears.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, this may is kind of into the same question as the last one, but I know when they took the hound hunting and the baiting away, in particular the hound hunters, through legislative action and the voters. My father was in the Senate at the time, and I know he was approached by the hounds group, a couple of hounds group in the state of Washington, and they reissued a bill that got shot down pretty darn quick. And it was to the effect that the hound hunters were coming at it not from the fact that they were upset that they couldn't harvest cougars anymore, even though that was part of it. Their big thing was that they were upset that it was now taking away both a lifestyle and an income. And they were trying to get something introduced that was allowing them to run cougars with dogs without the harvest of the animals. But essentially, and one of their arguments was the impact of those dogs going after the cougars, that it was pushing those cougars back into the areas where they typically were instead of going down into the urban areas, which at the time they were not having. But boy, they nailed it on the head when they said that that was probably what was going to happen. Long-winded question, but when you guys did some of the studies, and I know you probably didn't do it too much with dogs, but when you guys were using sound and stuff like that, did you see a better reaction with those cats in response to dogs barking than you did see other things? And I'm just curious if do you believe that would be a good solution? The problem is that the definition of hunting, I think that would be the thing, is if it's pursuit of an animal, even though you're not harvesting it, would they still classify that as hunting? But I guess the big question is do you think that would have an impact on the animals moving into interactions with humans more by allowing them to pursue with dogs, but not take, if you will? I'm just kind of trying to get your thoughts on that.
I think it would. And I would look over into Montana where there's, around Missoula and the Bitterroot Valley, there's a really active hound handler group over there. There's a ton of people that are out chasing cats around, and very few of them kill cats. It's a tight quota, but those cats get chased around all the time. They have way fewer issues, way fewer public safety incidents, and they have a ton of hound handlers available if there ever is a problem. So, I mean, it was kind of a forward-looking thing that the group you mentioned was talking about. It seems like common sense, but really only until recently, the technology just hasn't been available. So I'm kind of lucky to be on, the cutting edge with the technology, even the Garmin and different things that we're using to get this data. But yeah, I don't think this is a new idea. Hound handlers have kind of known how cats respond and behave for decades. So I don't know. Again, I don't know what it would look like on a landscape scale. I think it would have to be a big enough program that there were, hound handlers are going to have to get back involved and get back out in the woods and get their dogs trained and start chasing cats around and do something like that. And I don't know if that's a reality or not. I'd like to think it is, but it's a tough sell for a lot of people.
Spencer, did you have a question? Sorry.
No, I was just writing stuff down here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, anybody else? Gary, it's been a while since you're muted again, Gary. Damn boomers.
I'm trying to unmute myself. No, I'm good. I mean, I have enjoyed listening to a lot of it because a lot of the questions I had, they just got answered. So I'm good.
Yeah. I mean, literally, I could go down the list and everybody pretty much covered what I was looking for too. That's kind of why it's cool having this set up like this. Marie, did you have another question?
I guess my last question would be, how can we help? spread the word? I mean, we all know the benefits of pursuit and hound hunting. Are there ways we can help that with the greater public so that maybe someday we could reverse that ballot initiative?
I mean, I think you mentioned it right there, just with the greater public, and there's so few hound handlers around now that whatever image people have in their head, I don't know what it's based on, because they just don't see very many of us running around in Washington. If you go up into Canada or over into Idaho or Montana, you see hound boxes all over the place. So I think that having those conversations and just kind of like explaining what we're doing and explaining that, hounds aren't, whatever people think they might be, and whatever the sort of anti-hunting groups. I've had so many people try to tell me what it's like hound hunting. It's like, well, I have a pretty good sense of how this happens because I do it all the time. So, and it's just like people just have this idea in their head about what's going on out there, and most of them are really, really. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how to get through to those people, but just keep the messaging up, like that this is the most effective tool, and that is a public safety tool, and that it's, protecting pets and livestock, and there's a way to do it that's, it's non-lethal. It's the only catch and release hunting method that we have. We can go out and catch a cat and get a look at it, make a determination on health and sex and age and whether or not it's got kittens and all the things before you make a management decision. And if you can do it before it kills a pet or a livestock, it just seems like a win-win situation. So, I mean, I don't know what sort of policy changes or whatever else are even are possible or practical to consider at this point. But we really just need to maintain a positive image around dogs and, their effectiveness as a tool for the department.
I remember back in 1996 when when the ballot initiative happened and the smear campaign that the anti-hunters put on TV. I remember the TV commercials, and I remember all that stuff, and it was pretty. They were pretty bad. They were gruesome commercials, and they showed a horrible. The way they put it to the public would have made anybody that has on it vote against it, and that was what. And now we'd be up against that tenfold, because the anti-hunters are way more organized now than they were back then, and I think it would just be that much harder.
No, I agree. We have a messaging issue, but we're organizing. We're getting Howl and conservation groups and different things are kind of coalescing, and it's not hopeless. It's an uphill fight. It's an uphill battle. But I always try to bring my dogs around. I've been into Marie's group and given talks, and I bring the hounds with, and just show people like these are just dogs. They're well behaved. They're not bloodthirsty killers. They're not chasing our house cats around. They don't, they're trained specifically for cougars, and that's what they do. And it's just a tool that the state needs to keep available.
Does anybody know? This is a crazy. I don't know if anyone's going to get this, but does anybody know, first of all, how much money the timber companies lose per year, roughly?
I don't know how much it is. I know I got a couple of permits. Last year they did timber permits. I had 2 of them here in Washington, and we killed 2 bears off of a timber plantation that Stimson has, and it was a 40-acre plantation. The trees were about 30 years old, larch and Douglas fir, and almost every single tree was stripped.
Wow.
So, okay, I don't know the number on it. I'm sure we could find that out, but this will take some creativeness here. But I worked on a project with PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, and it's basically going in, actually with a number of companies, going in and saying, you're spending $25 million on waste. We think it's inefficient. We're going to come in and do an audit of your waste practices, and we bet we can get it down to $10 million. And the deal was, you pay us the difference. You're still saving money. My idea here is the timber companies, how many tens of millions of dollars is it? Come up with a business plan. We can come in and save you this much money. And they give you the money for marketing and advertising and a different public appearance, approach for commercials or billboards or whatever. And it'd take a lot of people to believe in that, and it'd take a really good business plan, but you could possibly get tens of millions of dollars if they're losing that much. And if they're like, yep, we believe in this, and this in the long run could actually end up saving us way more money than not doing it. It'd be an interesting creative approach. But I have heard that one bear can do $10,000 of damage every single day. So that adds up, and that's only one bear. Anyway.
That's an awesome idea. I like that.
On that. But it does work, believe me.
I just looked up USDA.gov. According to them, that a single bear can do up to 70 trees a day. So I don't know if I'm going to do the math on that, but that can be a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah. So PJ,
Charles,
we'll pay you $10 million a year because you're saving us. Now there's 15. We're paying 25. You know what I mean? So we're essentially saving 15 million because it's just that inefficient. And I think the same thing it'd be an interesting way to think about this with a big industry like that.
I don't think the dollar amount is included, but it's definitely the amount of trees is included in that permit for that depredation. What is it? Petition that spring bear timber harvest depredation. All of that info except for the dollar amount is in that petition. In an application you'd have to make. Be interesting to see if that goes through.
I had an interesting conversation with yesterday. Actually had a client come in and drop in 2 bears off. He's a manager for a timber company. I just sent him a text to see which timber company he works for. I don't know if I would say it if I knew it right now on this, but he said they went and he took a friend out and they shot 4 bears in a matter of a couple hours. He said in one clear cut they saw 6 bears, and he said this is the first time ever where they've seen more bears in their timber companies than they have deer. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
That's typical.
But I asked him about the hounds because I said, well, did you see the CR-102? And he had a pretty interesting take on it. He kind of looked at me and shook his head, and I said, what do you think? He's like, it's not going to do a dang thing. And I said, really? It kind of surprised me when he said that. And he said, until we get hounds back or we get baiting back, he goes, it's not going to do anything for the population. He did agree that it was a step in the right direction. But he was very adamant. He's like, unless we have hounds, he goes, it's not going to do as much as everybody seems to think it is. He said it will. You might take out a few bears, but he said it's where 1 bear is taken. He's like 6 more move in.
Yeah, that would be my guess too. It's just that's such a small thing.
Just to bring it back to the cougar, I know we're kind of nearing the end. Since we're not anytime soon going to get back hounds, I just maybe thought this would be a good opportunity for an expert on cougars to, give Washingtonians a little help in the upcoming season. Do you have any tips or tricks on how we can be more successful out in the field with targeting cougars, or while we're out hunting other game, increase our opportunity to run into one, potentially to harvest one?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most effective tactic is walking them down in fresh snow if you have it. Find a track and just start walking. They don't go as far as people think generally. And I don't really hunt them anymore for to kill them, but I still like walking tracks down. And there's been several times where I've just taken off walking a track by myself with no dogs or anything else and gotten a look at the cat where I probably could have got a shot. And if you bump it, just stay after it, because that's the other thing I'm learning is those cats, when you bump them and they run a few hundred yards or whatever, it might go even a half a mile, stay on it and bump them again and bump them again. Eventually they're just going to get tired of that, and they're just going to sit and watch you because they realize you're not really a threat until you are. That'd be my advice. And if I wanted to shoot one in Washington, that's how I would do it.
Gotcha. And so you'd wait for that fresh snow. Obviously, that makes it the easiest to track, but you can also do it in other situations.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect fresh snow. If you have a decent track or a trail camera picture and snow, you can go out and get after them. And, I think people could do the same thing and be calling periodically and do different things. But I like to walk and see new country and figure out how cats are using the landscape. So it's a fun way to go out and do it. If you find a cougar kill sitting on that, it's effective. Typically they'll come back at low light.
Yeah. How old does the kill have to be when they're, from your experience, that they're still interested? Because I know cougars don't eat a lot of rotten meat, do they?
Yeah, they'll eat pretty rotten meat. In the wintertime, though, it'll stay good for a long time, and they'll eat it until it's gone or when they kind of quit burying it, has been my experience. Typically, if they're going to return, they're going to have that pretty well cached and buried. If they eat and don't bury it, they might not be coming back.
Gotcha.
All right. Well,
good to know.
Yeah, I want to say thanks, Bart. It was a great conversation, and I really enjoyed having you on.
Yeah, appreciate your time, Bart.
Yeah, thank you, Bart.
Thank you.
Right on. Thank you all. I appreciate what you all are doing too.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Everyone have a good night.
All right, take it easy.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
See you.
Take it in.